Hi, good evening. If you're in Eastern Standard Time or if you're in Israel, it's good morning. I'm Meir Weinstein, and I'm joined with Baruch ben Yoseph. I'm here in Toronto, and Baruch ben Yoseph, he is on Harbat, on the Temple Mount, and every week we do the Torah Parsha live from Harbat. These are historic days. These are interesting days. Number one is just a couple of days before Tisha B'Av, and it's a day of incredible reflection of the destruction of our temples and other tragedies that occurred on that day. And we're told by the rabbis that it was problems of infighting with Jews that led to the destructions of the temples. And what we see right now is a lot of infighting going on in Israel right now. Some outrageous statements being made by those who are protesting against the government that was fairly elected. And we have Parsha, V'ahavta. And in this Parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu is pleading with God, please, let me come into Israel. Moses led the Jews out of Egypt to Har Sinai, all the battles and victories in the desert. And he wants to be able to go to Israel. And God permits him to see Israel from a height, from a mountain, from a distance, not in Israel. And yet here we have leaders of the opposition to this Israeli government. They're talking about civil war. They're talking about ending Israel. And our greatest leader, Moses, pleading with God to be able to just go into Israel. Baruch, how are you today?
Good. Baruch Hashem, thank God. Doing good. Big crowd here today. Bigger than usual. Lots of awareness to temple awareness, which is what we're involved in, of course. That's our goal, to raise the awareness, because obviously we're not going to make any strides towards building the Beit HaMikdash and renewing the service to Hashem on the Temple Mount if there's we don't raise the awareness. People don't know that you can come up. People don't know a lot of things. There's been a lot of fake. Today they use the term fake news. Well, there's been a lot of fake halakha over the years, reported by all kinds of anti-Zionist, anti-Eretz Israel rabbis that want to keep us in the exile for another 2,000 years instead of coming back to the land and renewing all the commandments that need to be done inside the land. So we're doing our thing here, and you mentioned, as you mentioned, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to see the land. In other words, this side of the Jordan. He was in Eretz Israel on the other side of the Jordan. In fact, he thought that maybe the decree against him for not coming into the land had been canceled, because he was in the other side of the Jordan, inside the land of Israel, of the 2.5 tribes, Reuven, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. And then he realized that he wasn't going to be allowed over the Jordan, so he pleaded with Hashem. Just Va'et Hanan, he pleaded with Hashem, praying to Hashem to allow him to come over the Jordan. And one of the reasons he said was to see the land, but also it says Hatar Hahar Hatov Hazeh Lebanon, the good mountain and the Lebanon, which the rabbis tell us, the sages tell us, that these are code words for the temple. That he wanted to see the Temple Mount, even if he only saw it from afar. He wanted to see the Temple Mount. He wanted to see where the temple would stand, because that's obviously the main goal. Besides the rest of the land, the main goal is to is the Temple Mount. That's the end game, as they say. And unfortunately, a lot of people want to spend their energies on issues are far less important than the end game. You know, it's we're here. We figure. I guess there's two ways to look at it. One way is you have to fix everything first, and then you deal with the temple. Okay, first you got to fix everything. And our opinion is first you need the temple, and then through the temple you can fix everything else. And that's a main argument that we have inside the national religious community. There's a lot of national religious Jews and rabbis that don't come up. They're against coming up to the Temple Mount. They're against dealing with rebuilding of the temple because they think all of Am Yisrael has to do tshuva first. We have to become religious, and then we can build a temple. It doesn't work that way. I mean, the concept of everybody becoming religious first is in the end, what we'll discuss it today is that there's only one way for everybody to become religious, and that's like a Purim story, where Haman is going to eradicate the Jewish people, and there's basically no choice, either do tshuva or get annihilated, and that's that's the only concept really of everybody becoming religious, doing tshuva. The rabbis tell us in the tractate of Megillah on dealing with the story of Purim is that the ring of Achashverosh that was given to Haman did more for bring the Jews to do tshuva than all of the prophets and prophetesses that the Jews had, that Hashem sent us to rebuke and to bring us back to do tshuva. So the fear of the anti-Semites, the fear of annihilation, has a lot stronger power for Jews to do tshuva than God's prophets, Hashem's prophets. Now, this brings us to one of Rabbi Kahana's main teachings, okay? Because this week, besides it being Parshat Va'etchanan, usually we're dealing mostly with the Parsha, with the portion of the week. This Haftorah this week, that we, after reading the Torah, we read the Haftorah from the prophets. There's a very special Haftorah called Nachamu from the prophet Isaiah. Now, this is why this Shabbat is specifically called Shabbat Nachamu. Every Shabbat after Tisha B'Av, we read this Haftorah from the prophet Isaiah, and it's from chapter 40. If you want to look it up, read it. It's a very important chapter from Isaiah, talking about the redemption. After everything said and done, after all of the prophecies of destruction, because the Jews didn't do tshuva, didn't return, we're given a prophecy of nechama, of consolation, called Nachamu. And it starts off very strangely, the Haftorah. Nachamu, the word of consolation is said twice. Usually if something is said twice in a row, it has a very important kind of meaning. It's not just, it means it's a lot stronger a meaning than it usually would be. So we have this Haftorah, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. It's a very famous song by Shlomo Karlbach that we sing, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. And it's interesting that there's a famous story about Rabbi Shlomo Karlbach and Tisha B'Av and Nachamu. In fact, maybe I get Simcha to tell the story because it's very important, because it's definitely connected to the temple. Reb Simcha, can you tell the story of Reb Shlomo and Tisha B'Av and what happened, when he was a kid in Austria? Where was it, in Austria?
Sometimes, but not so badly. There's an expression Dr. Rav used to say on Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, one day, who needs to eat? And on Tisha B'Av, how can you eat? So, with someone who saw his parents all his life benching have compassion upon Yerushalayim, the holy city, upon your holy sanctuary. We build Yerushalayim. All of a sudden, Tisha B'Av is over. Shlomo's a little kid. He sees his parents eating. He gets all excited. He says, "I can't believe it. Mashiach came." His parents say, "No, no, no. But we're eating. How could you eat? Mashiach still didn't come yet." And this is a little bit. He was so sure of the fact that we're eating and we continue with the everyday life. So Tisha B'Av is not only because it says in the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law, one has to fast or one has to be in the state of Avelut, of mourning, but it's how can you eat? At such a day, you want to make a hunger strike before Hashem. Everyone in the country is striking for all different alternative reasons, but we're striking because we want God to have his house, to have his permanent address, to have a place of nifgash, a place to meet. So couldn't believe it's possible that his parents are eating and continuing when the temple still has yet to be built.
Oh, there we have it. So,
3.5, 5 years old or something.
Yeah, he was about 5 years old when he said that. So again, going back to Nachamu, there's a great commentator on the prophets named the Malbim. The Malbim was a rabbi from Europe in the 19th century. He was a big opponent of the reform movement, and in fact, he was persecuted by them. They constantly were attacking him, and his comment is an excellent commentary, and I'm sure you can get it in English too. But the important thing is that he brings down, why does it say Nachamu, Nachamu? Why does it say twice the word consolation? So he talks about something that of course, Rabbi Ghana spoke about constantly, was that there are two, the prophet Isaiah tells us that there are two, I believe it's chapter 60 in Isaiah, tells us there are two ways to redemption. There are two ways for the final redemption. There are two ways that will get to the building of the temple. One way is called Be'ita, in its time, and the other way is called Achishena, speedily before its time. So how does that work out? How do we have in its time and speedily before its time? And the idea is that there are two ways to redemption. There's in its time, meaning that God, Hashem, made a specific date, time in history, when no matter what happens, there's going to be a final redemption. And we're going to come back to the land and build the temple and so on. If that happens, if it's in its time, it means that we didn't deserve it. We're not being rewarded. We're sanctifying Hashem's name, not because we deserve it, because his name needs to be sanctified. And the only way to be sanctified is to have this redemption where we restore his house and the kingdom of Hashem over the world. So if that happens, it's going to come through terrible tribulations and catastrophes and so on. But Achishena, being before its time, speedily before its time, means that we merited the redemption. And because we merited the redemption, it comes before its time, and it comes through miraculous miracles and wonders, and everything's good. And so Rabbi Kahana, who is, of course, his entire Torah, Rabbi Kahana is focused on bringing the final redemption. Teaches us that when Hashem wants us to do tshuva, to be rewarded with the final redemption, he specifically means doing the commandments that are dangerous, the commandments that are not easy to do, the commandments that through those commandments you're sanctifying God's name, which means conquering the land, expelling the enemy, freeing the Temple Mount, removing the mosque from the Temple Mount, bringing all the Jews back to the land. All of these things that he lists in this final chapter of the book of Rayon, the 5 things that need to be done. These are the commandments that are considered to be dangerous, or that realistically speaking, you're bringing the wrath of the enemies upon us by doing that. So this is what he taught us. This is what we have to do. We have to do these commandments. We have to do these commandments that are considered dangerous, and then we'll be rewarded with the final redemption. So we have basically two options, and it more or less looks like we're going in the wrong direction. We're going in the direction of, in its time, because we've seen these terrible calamities and destructions like the Holocaust, and since the Holocaust has passed almost 80 years, and we're still not there yet. We're still, I mean, we're up here on the Temple Mount, and we're getting closer, but we're still so far away when you see what's going on up here. So you would have to say that we're.
If I could interject for just a
Sure.
second, just to add to that. So we're so close to Tisha B'Av, and it's a national day of mourning. And I wonder. We're told to mourn, and we're just not there, and so on and so forth. But we have it in our ability. There should be this morning, right now, 10,000 Jews or more wanting to go up to the Temple Mount. It's up to us. It's up to the Jewish people to get the job done. Now there's over 7 million Jews living in Israel. It's amazing watching the ingathering of the exiles happening in front of our eyes, and the land of Israel is being built up. But still, we have like a galut mentality, like a second-class status, we feel, or something like that anyway, an inferiority complex. What is Joe Biden going to say, his administration? What is Tony Blinken going to say? Tony Blinken, who, yes, he's Jewish. He got married in a church to a non-Jewish girl, and he's like Mr. Example of American Jews. And yet we have, like I said, we have over 7 million Jews living in Israel. And we talk about on Tisha B'Av, we certainly reflect. And yet, where are the masses of Jews to come up to Har Bayit, at least to make that real statement that we want, you know how the Chabad says, we want Mashiach now. Well, we want the temple now. We go up en masse on significant days at least. And it certainly is significant during the 9 days. What better time? I think even that Tisha B'Av should be transformed to a day of celebration. Rabbi Kahana says we don't wait for Mashiach, we bring the Mashiach, and everybody is like in waiting mode. So, if the Jewish people had that consciousness that Rabbi Kahana was getting across, that we don't wait, we bring the Mashiach, we would be doing what we have to do. And one thing would lead to another. If there would be thousands going up on a daily basis, at least during the 9 days, what a statement that would make and what that could potentially lead to as well. But that's what I just wanted to add with what you were saying.
Well, obviously I agree with you 100%. And unfortunately, I've been involved with the Temple Har Bayit movement now for the past, since Rabbi Kahana was murdered, more or less. 32, 33 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we're coming up on a steady basis, except for when I've been banned to come up because of periodically I was banned. And we made progress, but like you said, it's not enough. How do you explain it? How do you explain this lack of interest, I would say, in going up to the Temple Mount? One time, somebody who actually doesn't come up, and he's against coming up, but he was talking about how important it is, the Temple Mount and rebuilding the temple. He's saying that basically, when it comes to the Temple Mount, we're like autistic. He says we're autistic. We don't know how to communicate. We don't know how to communicate with Hashem properly, and so we prefer to communicate from afar and not close up, not to get too close. And it's so true. You would think that everybody would want to, let me in. Why am I not? Why are you letting me in? And then instead of fighting to get in, they're doing everything possible to stay out. Look, a lot of people think they're still under the opinion that you come up here and you're threatened by the Arabs, and it's a terrible experience. Like a few weeks ago, I brought somebody up who hadn't been up here in 10 years, and he kept saying to me he doesn't want to come up because he had such an awful experience. I said, well, things aren't the same way anymore. When he came up, he couldn't believe the difference. So, is that enough to get people to come up on a steady basis? I don't think so. I think it's like you have to really feel the desecration of God's name,
Mhm.
desecration of His name, and the yearning to sanctify His name to the point where nothing else matters. I only give up time from work and school and whatever I have to go through to get up here. Whether it's waiting online, going through the security check, being told by the police where to go, but whatever they make me, whatever loops they make me jump through, I'm going to come up because it's so important. And I don't think that most people feel that way. It's just something. It's like the missing link, as they say. Can I help you down?
Right.
Need help?
Uh,
You all right?
I think I'm all right. How can I tell you a story?
Right here. Somebody's going to tell us a
While you're
story.
on the
Yeah.
subject.
You're from Boston, right? Where are you from?
That's right.
Boy, just believe that Jews from Boston even come to the temple now. Say your name, sir.
Joe Robinson. I have to say something very interesting. On 3 occasions, I came up here to the Temple Mount with Rabbi Moshe Tendler. He used to come to Israel 3 or 4 times
That's
a
the
year.
son-in-law of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein.
Correct. And he used to come up here 3 or 4 times a year and to Israel. And when the time he came, he always came to Harabaya, to the Temple Mount here. And there were 3 occasions, somewhat random. So there were 3 occasions that I made the rounds with him. On one of those occasions, somebody asked him whether his father-in-law, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, was aware that he came to the Harabaya, to the Temple Mount, and if so, what was his response or what was his reaction to it? And Rabbi Tendler explained to us that his father-in-law, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, absolutely knew that he came to the Harabaya, and he had absolutely no problem with it whatsoever. So I just wanted to let you know.
Wow. Wow.
Right.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
important. Because Rabbi Moshe Feinstein was considered Gadol Ador,
Right.
and people that say you can't come up, the rabbis don't let us up, and they make up stories. But you see here that the Gadol Ador, knew that his son-in-law was coming up, and he approved of it. And even there's a halachic response that he gave, showing that the Rav Moshe Feinstein said that we're allowed to come up. So now I just want to get to what's called the what we're discussing about Nachamu and the 2 types of redemption. So the Malbim, and of course Rabbi Kahana would say this also, that there's a third, even though there's only says Nachamu, and only because it's in its time. The third possibility is that even though it's going to be in its time, you could speed up the time. Like in Egypt, Jews were supposed to be in Egypt for 400 years. It says one place it says 430 years, one place it says 400 years. Another place it says that they were there for 216 years. Another place it says 100 and something years. I forget how many.
430 years from Brooklyn.
Right. So there's different. Right. So there's different ways of counting. From when do we start counting? The idea that we're told is that even when we're not deserving of it, there's still acts that we can do that speed up the end time. And Rabbi Kana constantly said that yeah, even though that we may be heading towards the end time, we can still speed up the end time by doing certain things, even if we're not 100% there. So everybody, nobody can say, well, what could I do? The Jews don't want to be redeemed. I'm stuck. I'm part of the nation. There's nothing I can do. Well, that's not true. That's totally not true, because there are. There. Hello? There?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I got
Your-
people
The
call in.
video has frozen. I can hear you.
Okay, so now I hear myself. That's great. Sure. Anyhow, we're getting towards the end of the show. But the bottom line is that we have to say that nobody is nobody's free to do, not to do what they can do. And like we said, there's a lot that can be done, even if it's very small things like just coming up here. I mean, it's not really that hard. I mean, it requires somewhat of a sacrifice. But again, here we have Shimon, Rabbi Nachman, Rabbi Nachman representative on Temple. He has some words of wisdom today.
Well, I didn't get to do Birkat Kohanim because for whatever reason the police are smashing it now the past few days. So I'm going to do Birkat Kohanim right now. Yivarechecha
Yeah, your the video on your cell.
Yair Adonai
Frozen.
panav elecha v'yasem
So we just blessed by Shimon the Kohen. And do you have any words of wisdom for us? Like,
one thing that came to mind recently is the people in Chazal, it's that there are good days and bad days. So Rabbi Nachman days, there are only good days. The days that we call bad days are just days that it's harder to get to the good. But the good that is hidden in those days is even greater than what we call good days. And the best example of that is Tisha B'Av. Because we have the Korban that we have in our game. However, we also know it's the birth of Messiah. And it's called the Moed, it's called the festival. And we also know that in the future it's going to be one of the festivals that remain even after the redemption. So it's important to remember that whenever we're having what we call a bad day, remember that if we work, we can reveal light in that day that is greater than all the things that we think are good.
wow, unbelievable. Thank goodness that we have great rabbis here like Shimon and Rav Simcha, and we have words of wisdom from the Temple Mount, which is no higher than that. Because
Right.
at Sion, I say Torah, Adonai Yisrael. From Sion will come forth the Torah and the word of God from Jerusalem. Yeah, okay. What?
Say more.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so a little bit just elaborating what Baruch was teaching from the album. The last pasuk of Megillat Lecha ends, Yemos Mastanu Katsafta Lenu Admod. Somehow the Hashem, you despised me, you were angry with me. And then we finish and we say, Hashivenu Hashem, Elecha v'nashtiva, Chadesh Shemenu Tikadem. Come back to us, Hashem. Let your divine presence return, and then we'll return to you. Renew the days of hope. So Shlomo Kabach would teach that everything when it comes to anger, it has to be in proportion. If someone doesn't call you back or someone insults you, you're angry for a week, you're angry for 2 weeks. But if you're angry for 100 years, it doesn't sound rational. It doesn't sound 100%. But the closer you are to someone, the more you feel connected to that person. Even the smallest insult, even the smallest deviant behavior upsets you so much that it's the punishment and the anger is beyond proportion. So on Yom Kippur, I ask Hashem, just forgive me. But Tisha B'Av, I don't want forgiveness. Tisha B'Av, we want kindness. So in the Haftarah we say, Laka Hashem, Kiflai Makov HaTatah. Hashem punished us double-fold for all our sins, out of proportion. But the fact that you're so angry with us so many years later, it must mean that you really still love us. And there's a deep connection between us. Sometimes, unfortunately, husband and wife, when everything is dead, is when everything is apathetic and The fact that there's anger, Kimos Mastanu, that your anger and you despise us, if Hashem should come back, reconcile, and the headquarters of closeness, the Makom HaMifkash, of the ultimate, the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and His soul made Am Yisrael, should be able to come once again, which renew our covenant, and renew our connection, and all our holy marriage vows. Tisha B'Av should be the great Yom Tov.
Shkoach, amen. Guys, this is where it is. This is where it's happening. And everybody, this is the opportunity.
Yes.
We need
Baruch,
yeah.
Baruch, the screen is frozen right now, so maybe we'll sign off now. We'll do it again next week.
Okay, great.
But, thank you very much, and thank you everyone who participated as well in Parsha of the Week. Words of encouragement regarding Tisha B'Av and where the state of affairs is for where the Jewish people are right now, what the Jewish people have to do to rectify and ultimately build the base of Mikdash. Baruch, thank you very much, and next week's Parsha as well.
Take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.